From time immemorial, men have always been known to commit violent crimes more often than women, but when women decide to deviate from societal norms and go rogue, the end result is usually unprecedented, and so is their reaction when the consequences of their actions are announced. Join me in today's video as I reveal the shocking reactions of 15 female convicts to life sentences. Sandra Lane.
I know what I've done. I don't know what else to say. I just don't know. I don't want to die in jail or prison.
In April 2013, Sandra Lane, a 75-year-old Detroit-based woman, was drowned in tears as the judge read out her sentence for second-degree murder.
Why did you keep shooting him on the charge of homicide, second-degree murder, that you served 20 to 40 years in the state prison of Michigan?
It was a terrifying sight for people who attended the hearing, as the retired school teacher was handed a long-term sentence, which meant she could potentially spend the rest of her life behind bars. Surprisingly, Lane's daughter, Jennifer Hoffman, cheered on as the verdict was delivered. In fact, during the court proceeding, Jennifer pleaded with the judge to give Sandra Lane the maximum sentence, and that's because the victim of Lane's erratic shooting was Jonathan Hoffman, the 17-year-old son of Jennifer Hoffman. In other words, Sandra Lane was convicted of killing her own grandson. According to reports, Jonathan had been living with Sandra Lane since 2011, after his parents, Jennifer and Michael Hoffman, finalized their divorce. While speaking to the jury, Lane explained that she was worried about Jonathan's drug abuse and his choice of friends. And for a fact, Jonathan had a worrying history of drug use. In March 2012, police received a domestic disturbance call involving Lane and Jonathan, but the incident was treated as a mild disagreement between two family members, and no charges were filed. That same month, Jonathan was pulled over and warned by the police for possession of marijuana and drug paraphernalia. The 17-year-old teenager was eventually given a 93-day suspended sentence and placed on 12 months probation. According to Lane's account of the incident, Jonathan had become infuriated after he tested positive for synthetic marijuana, popularly known as K2 or spice. On their way back from the hospital, Lane claimed she had to stop the car 3 times to calm Jonathan down. However, when they got home, a heated argument ensued, and in the rush of the moment, Lane shot her own grandson 10 times with a handgun. Defense lawyer Jerome Sabata said Sandra Lane acted out of fear for her safety. She was fearful. She killed a person that she loved, that she tried to save. There are no winners. No matter what we do to her, it doesn't really matter. Watch her. She's in her hell. Obviously, the jury thought otherwise and handed Lane perhaps the worst possible sentence she could have imagined. Vonda Starr Smith. Vonda Starr Smith was all smiles and even found time to hug her attorney Gene Smith when she arrived at the courtroom ahead of her sentencing at the Greene County Criminal Court in May 2018. But by the time Judge John F. Duggar Jr. read out his verdict, Smith's countenance had changed as she struggled to wipe off the heavy flow of tears in her eyes, and you can understand why. The judge had found Vonda Smith guilty of 1 count of first-degree murder of Jessie Nicole Morrison, a 21-year-old pregnant woman whom she reportedly killed in August 2016. As expected, the jury also found Smith guilty of the second-degree murder of Morrison's unborn child. Smith's attorney pleaded with the jury to give his client the low end of the possible sentence, arguing that she was innocent and had an admirable 28-year record as an employee of the Laughlin Memorial Hospital. However, Judge Duggar was convinced that the appropriate punishment for Vonda Smith was a life sentence for the first-degree murder of Nicole Morrison and a maximum sentence of 25 years for the second-degree murder of her unborn child. Both sentences will be served concurrently. The motive behind this heartbreaking murder wasn't exactly clear, and substantial evidence suggests that an accomplice could have been involved. However, prosecutors believe strongly that Smith was mainly responsible for the crime. Before her death, Nicole Morrison briefly dated Smith's son, with whom she had a son. According to prosecutors, Smith had become obsessed with her grandson and wanted to stay in close contact with him. The authorities didn't highlight whether Morrison denied her access from doing this. However, it is believed that a confrontation ensued between both women on the 12th of August 2016, during which Smith injured and eventually murdered Morrison. Forensic analysis of her corpse showed that Morrison suffered several skull fractures, bruises, and other blunt force injuries as she tried to fight off her attacker. But considering that she was pregnant at the time, it was literally impossible to fight her way out of such a violent attack. Roxana Sikorsky. Tears flowed freely as the jury tried to get to the bottom of Roxana Sikorsky's case of assault with intent to murder. The culprit wept profusely as her mother read a statement to the judge.
We desire closure of this matter, but also reason in its conclusion. Roxy was misled and used by an older adult. This has been proven in court. However, nothing will benefit this child by sending her to jail. She made some poor choices, which led her to this conviction.
The scene was even more emotional when the judge called Roxana Sikorsky and her lawyer for their own statement.
I would like to apologize to my family for not being the daughter they wished I would be. And I promise that I will get better.
Despite her passionate plea, the judge sentenced her to between 10 to 20 years of prison. And while prosecutors argued that this was a fair judgment for Roxana Sikorsky, her mom believes the jury could have been a bit more lenient. Roxana was only 15 when in October 2014, her then-boyfriend Michael Rivera urged her to kill her parents and siblings in a bid to avoid prosecution for illegally having sex with her. In a text conversation, Rivera coerced Roxana to murder her family, saying, "Baby, I'm here, just cut the throat quickly on both of them. Just stab their necks, baby, at the artery." According to reports, Roxana responded with skepticism, saying, "I can't. I'm not a psycho." After the back and forth, Michael Rivera was able to convince Roxana, and she summoned the courage to carry out his evil plan. Her intent was to start with her little brother. She had planned to slit his throat with a fish fillet knife, but fortunately for the young boy, Roxana couldn't execute her plan, and the noise from the scuffle woke up their sister. Roxana Sikorsky fled the scene, and the medics were able to save her brother. However, the long arm of the law never stopped chasing Roxana, and she was eventually brought to book in March 2016. Diana Lovejoy. When the guilty verdict was announced against Diana Jean Lovejoy, the judge and everyone else present in the courtroom got a bit more than they had expected to see. The accused looked astonishingly towards her attorney by her left, as if to imply that the judgment was unfair.
We further find true the allegation that Diana Jean Lovejoy acted willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation within the meaning of Penal Code Section 189.
What happened next was even more shocking. As the concluding part of her sentence was read out, Lovejoy appeared to pass out before collapsing to her right.
We further find true the allegation that Diana Jean Lovejoy was vicariously armed with a firearm within the meaning of Penal Code Section 12022, paren A, paren 1, dated 11/13/17, signed foreperson, to commit murder.
I need to take a break.
The course session was temporarily suspended, and Lovejoy was wheeled to a nearby hospital where she was attended to. Lovejoy's problems began in September 2016 when she reportedly connived with Weldon McDavid, a gun instructor, to try and kill her husband, Greg Mulvihill. The couple was in the last phase of a contentious divorce case and a bitter custody fight for their 3-year-old son. According to reports, the divorce case had been ongoing since 2014, but a resolution was found in the summer of 2016 when the couple agreed to share custody of their son, and Lovejoy was ordered to pay her ex-husband $120,000. But unknown to Mulvihill and the court, Lovejoy had other ideas. She lied to Weldon McDavid, who had become her lover, that her ex-husband had sexually assaulted her and her son. Prosecutors believed that she gave the order for McDavid to murder Mulvihill. So, on the 1st of September 2016, McDavid lured Mulvihill to a dark path near Carlsbad in California and shot at him with a long barrel gun. Thankfully, Greg Mulvihill survived the attack, and justice was served as Lovejoy was sentenced to 26 years in prison. McDavid, on the other hand, was sentenced to between 50 years and life in prison. Tatiana Fusari. Tatiana Fusari, a 30-year-old Michigan mother, shook her head in disbelief and cried profusely. Her husband and accomplice in the killing of their 10-month-old daughter, Seth Welch, had his mouth wide open as he and his wife learned their fate.
They're alleging that you murdered one Mary Welch. That is a charge called homicide felony murder. It is life without parole. It requires a DNA sample to be taken upon arrest, which is often like a cotton swab or in the inside of your cheek. The second offense that you're both charged with is called child abuse in the first degree, where they're alleging you knowingly or intentionally caused serious physical harm to a child. They're talking about this Mary Welch. It is a felony, possible penalty of up to life imprisonment.
The couple was convicted of 2 criminal charges by Kent County Judge Paul Denefeld on the 15th of October 2021. These charges include felony murder and first-degree child abuse. At the beginning of the proceedings, Fusari pleaded no contest to all charges. However, the judge gave her an option to withdraw the plea and allow a jury to decide her fate in what would be a heartbreaking trial. According to prosecutors, Fusari and Welch deliberately refused to feed their baby for days, and the infant reportedly only gained a single pound in the 10 months that she lived on Earth. An autopsy sanctioned by the court confirmed that the baby died of malnutrition and dehydration, and emergency responders testified that by the time Welch called 911 on the 2nd of August 2018, the baby had already been dead dead for at least 72 hours. Rescuers noticed with horror how her cheeks and eyes had become pallid and sunken into her face. Fusari unsuccessfully tried to shift the blame, claiming that she was a victim of abuse and rape in the hands of Welch. "He takes the AK out of the closet and he tells me to get on my knees and he puts the gun to my head," she said during the trial. "And at this point, I don't know why he's angry. I don't know what I could have done this time for him to be so upset with me to put a gun to my head." Fusari's lawyer, Damian Nunzio, argued that this constant abuse made her a shadow of herself and unable to care for her child the way she wanted to. Nunzio further added that Mr. Welch threatened to beat and kill his client. Despite the threats, Fusari claimed she fed and nursed the baby. However, the autopsy carried out by a county medical examiner suggests otherwise. Considering the evidence before him, Judge Denefeld sentenced Fusari to life in prison for the first-degree murder charge and 15 to 30 years for the child abuse charge. The jury also ordered her to pay all fines and court costs. Similarly, Seth Welch was given a life sentence without parole. Mitchell Blair. Mitchell Blair stood remorseless and motionless beside her lawyer as she requested a life sentence without parole from the judge in the Wayne County courtroom.
Now, the information I have before me is that you want to plead guilty to count 2, the premeditated murder of Stoney Blair.
Yes.
And count 3, the felony murder of Stephen Barry.
Yes.
Okay. Am I correct that you want to plead guilty to those counts?
Yes.
Okay.
Michelle Blair's horrific story began in August 2012 when she came back home to find her youngest son, Matthew, stimulating himself with a doll. When she asked why he was engaging in such a gross act, he confessed that his older brother Stephen had been sexually abusing him. Being a victim of sexual assault herself, Michelle was enraged and immediately called in Stephen for questioning. While interrogating him, she lost her cool and beat him to death. To make his punishment worse, she poured hot water on his organs. Once she confirmed he was dead, she packed his body and stuffed it in her deep freezer. 9 months later, Michelle discovered that her older daughter Stoney was molesting Matthew as well, so she gave her the same treatment she gave Stephen, but in a different way. Michelle beat and starved Stoney until she died. Then this remorseless mom of 4 stuffed Stoney's body inside the same freezer where she had put Stephen's dead body 9 months earlier. All of these were done in May 2013. However, the authorities only got to find out when Michelle was evicted from her home because she couldn't pay her rent in 2015. Perhaps the most worrying thing about Michelle Blair is the nonchalant attitude and the lack of remorse she showed after committing the crime. During the court proceeding, she blamed the fathers of the children for not showing up and insisted that killing them was the right thing to do. In fact, in an interview with True Crime Daily, she reiterated that she'd kill them again if she had the opportunity.
Hell no. No. No.
And you feel no remorse for that?
I would kill him again.
Bonnie Duarte. Bonnie Duarte was overwhelmed with tears and regret as she begged the judge and the family of her victims for forgiveness during her sentencing in February 2020.
At this point, I don't even know who's going to raise my children, or if I'm ever going to be able to ever hug them again or comfort them. No one is to blame but me. I take responsibility.
Duarte ultimately signed up for a lifetime behind bars on the 29th of March 2018 when she crashed her Hyundai Sonata into a Toyota Corolla carrying 4 teenagers as they stopped at a red light at the Pacific Coast Highway and Magnolia Street. The impact caused the Toyota car to crash into a pole, catching fire and killing 18-year-old Dylan Mack, 17-year-old Brooke Hawley, and 17-year-old AJ Rossi. The 4th passenger, Alexis Vargas, escaped the accident alive but sustained very severe injuries and burns in the process. Duarte's blood alcohol level at the time of the crash was 0.3%, over 3 times the legal limit. After listening to long statements from the victims' friends and families, Orange County Superior Court Judge Gary Pear sentenced her to 45 years for the 3 counts of second-degree murder of Dylan, Brooke, and Rossi. The jury also found her guilty of 1 count charge of driving under the influence of alcohol and causing great bodily injury to Alexis Vargas, which earned her an additional 6-year sentence. Duarte offered a heartfelt apology to the family of the victims in her statement in court. "I am changed, and I am remorseful and very regretful of the actions I made. I wasn't in the right state of mind mentally and emotionally. I didn't think further into the consequences. I know no words I say will bring closure to this tragedy. I apologize for this selfish decision." However, her seemingly sincere apology didn't do much to console the victims' families. "With your actions, you've committed us to our own prison. We are imprisoned," Rainey Mack, the mother of Dylan Mack, told the court. "We are in a hell you cannot think of." Shelby Isaac. The weight of the sentence delivered by Judge James Lammy was too much for Shelby Isaac to handle. A lady who appears to be Shelby's attorney was seen patting her back in a bid to calm her down. But as soon as she heard the first judgment, the convict sobbed and collapsed in grief. In the background, a woman believed to be Shelby's mom could be heard wailing.
Of second-degree murder as included in count 1. signed by the foreperson of the jury. Mr. Oliver, is that your verdict?
The judge didn't seem bothered by her antics, though. As Shelby wept and slumped to the floor, he continued reading the sentence, showing very little emotion and concern for the ongoing drama in the courtroom, even as court workers tried to stabilize her before taking her to the hospital. Anyone watching this very emotional court session would have felt pity for Shelby Isaac. However, the gravity of her crime suggests that she deserves the 30-year sentence that she got, and perhaps even more. It all started in January 2016 when Shelby shot the co-owner of a local hair business, Eddie Tate Jr., and his pregnant girlfriend, Edwina Thomas. The then 18-year-old was a regular customer of the business. However, the business relationship reportedly reached breaking point on the 22nd of January 2016 when she tried to get a refund for the hair extension she had bought earlier. Another source claimed that she had actually tried to steal the hair weaves from the store. Whatever the case was, prosecutors confirmed that she shot both Eddie and his girlfriend in the 2100 block of Westchester Circle. Eddie died at the scene, but Edwina was rushed to the hospital when she eventually gave up the ghost. Following the incident, Shelby was charged and convicted for the first-degree murder of Eddie and reckless homicide of an unborn baby. A co-defendant, Victoria Say, was also questioned during the investigation after it was revealed that she gave Shelby Isaac a lift while she was escaping the scene. Shayna Hubers. Shayna Hubers kept a straight face as she tendered a lifeless apology to her family and other people she may have caused pain following the death of her boyfriend Ryan Poston, whom she shot 6 times in 2012. Lead prosecutor Michelle Snodgrass was extremely livid at Hubers, particularly because the 21-year-old did not at any point of the trial offer an official apology to the victim's family.
Not at one point in time, nor at any point in time, have you ever said that you were sorry for putting 6 bullets in Ryan Poston's body. In fact, what you've said is that you hope to God he's burning in hell. Didn't you say that on phone calls?
Shayna Hubers was tried twice, and on both occasions, she was found guilty of killing Ryan Poston. Her case was recommended for a retrial after a juror that presided over the first trial was convicted of a felony. However, Judge Daniel Zala didn't see any reason to alter the initial verdict of a life sentence. And even if he did, the lack of remorse from Hubers would have convinced him to stick to his guns. Your actions that evening were grossly violent and intentionally calculated to cause his death, Zala said. Hubers told the jury that Poston often abused her and also pressured her to perform sexual acts in him. Furthermore, she stated her inability to orgasm was the breaking point in their relationship. However, after prosecutors scanned through the text messages between them and their friends, they decided that Poston was innocent of this accusation. Defense attorney David Eldridge pleaded for the jury to give his client a minimum sentence of 20 years because she was mentally young. But apparently, the judge saw no reasoning behind this argument and ultimately gave her the maximum sentence. Elizabeth Escalona. This is Elizabeth Escalona, a convicted criminal who murdered her 2-year-old baby named Jocelyn Cedillo in cold blood. The notorious child killer looked emotionless as a bailiff officer marched her to a designated seat in the courtroom, but it was only a matter of time before her straight face took a different look. Elizabeth cried uncontrollably as she was confronted with pictures of the bruises she inflicted on Jocelyn. The sight of Elizabeth weeping after seeing the pictures tells you everything you need to know about the barbaric and despicable things that she did to her child in the hours leading to her death in September 2011. During the court proceeding, Elizabeth was quite critical of her actions and even labeled herself a monster. "I hit her, I kicked her constantly, and she didn't deserve that," said Escalona. "Only a monster does that." While delivering his judgment of a 99-year sentence for Elizabeth Escalona, Judge Larry Mitchie admitted that she had been a victim of sexual violence in the past, which could have possibly affected her mental state. However, he clearly emphasized that even if that had happened, it doesn't justify the fact that Elizabeth, a supposed mother, would hack down her own child in the way that she did. Addressing Escalona in court, Dallas County Prosecutor Aaron Price said, "You savagely beat your child to the edge of death. Elizabeth lies to hide the evil." Elizabeth reportedly lost her cool with Jocelyn after she pooped her pants. Her other children recalled that she attacked Jocelyn violently, and police confirmed that she hit the baby with different objects and glued her hands to a wall. According to medical reports, this assault caused Jocelyn significant brain trauma and several physical injuries. Reacting to these revelations, Elizabeth Thesty said, "I have no comment and only God can judge me. That's all I gotta say." Jodi Arias.
It's my firm belief that death would bring me untold peace and freedom. That's my personal belief. If I died today, I would be free and I would be at peace.
Jordi Arias opened the floor in a courtroom in Phoenix with a shocking speech that suggested that she wanted a death sentence. But a few minutes into the speech, she backtracked from this stance, claiming that she needed to fight for her life.
But I had to fight for my life just like I did on June 4th, 2008, because I realized how selfish it would be for me to escape accountability for this mess that I've created.
Arias had asked for a retrial after she was convicted for killing her ex-boyfriend. She told the jury that she was denied a fair trial when the case was first tried in 2008. But in the end, her call for a retrial only brought her evil deeds to the limelight again. In June 2008, Arias brutally murdered 30-year-old Travis Alexander. When his body was recovered from the bathroom in his Arizona home, rescuers noticed that he had been shot in the face, stabbed several times, and his neck was slit from ear to ear. During this retrial, a 3-judge panel found that there were significant errors during the first trial. However, they also found substantial evidence that confirmed Arias Jordi was responsible for the murder. Arias admitted to shooting and killing Alexander, but her attorney argued that she did so in self-defense. The jury refuted this claim but couldn't reach a consensus on whether or not she deserved a death sentence or not, so Arias was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
It is ordered. The defendant shall be incarcerated in the Department of Corrections for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
To this day, I can't believe that I was capable of doing something that terrible, Arias said after the ruling. I'm truly disgusted and repulsed with myself. I'm horrified because of what I did, and I wish there was some way I could take it back. Aileen Wuornos.
I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this, but I take full responsibility for my actions. It was them or me. I am sorry for all the pain that my actions have caused. I am prepared to die if you say it is necessary.
From this opening statement, it appeared that Aileen Wuornos is a remorseful criminal that's willing to own up and take full responsibility for committing multiple murders. Long before she landed in court for murder, Wuornos had been arrested several times for smaller crimes, such as armed robbery, auto theft, and check surgery. She lived a carefree life and worked primarily as a prostitute. But in some cases, some of her customers got more than they had bargained for. Between 1989 and 1990, Wuornos Aileen reportedly murdered at least 7 men. Wuornos claimed she killed all of these men in self-defense, but the jury thought otherwise.
I sentence you in case number 91-463 to death for the murder of Troy Burris. Case number 91-304. I sentence you to death for the murder of Charles Humphreys. Case number 91-112, Citrus County case number. I sentence you to death for the murder of David Spear.
Wuornos' violent reaction to this verdict was a stark contrast to the calm, composed, and perhaps sensible statement she made a few minutes earlier. She went on a vicious rage, attacking the judge and everyone else in sight.
Thank you. And probably see, I'll be up in heaven while y'all rotting in hell. May your wife and kids get raped. I know I was raped. You ain't nothing but a bunch of stump.
Wuornos was executed in 2002 via lethal injection, and just like she did after her sentence was announced, she had some very selective words to say. I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus June 6th. Like the movie, Big Mothership and all, I'll be back. Keandra Cook. 19-year-old Keandra Cook and her mother went viral in 2018 for their excessive reaction at the S. James Foxman Justice Center in Florida after the teenager got a 20-year sentence for 3 charges, including carjacking, attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and felony battery.
For that, I'm going to go ahead and adjudicate you guilty of all 3 charges, sentence you to 20 years in state prison.
Cook reportedly used a dating app to lure Emmanuel Purcell to South Daytona in March 2017. When Purcell arrived, Miss Cook and her boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, attempted to steal his car, and in that struggle, Bass shot and seriously injured Purcell. According to reports, Cook and her mother were told by her defense team that she could escape jail time by accepting the plea deal presented by the prosecutors after pleading with the court that her attorney had misled her. Graciously, Judge Foxman allowed her to take a new plea deal. During her appearance in court, Cook offered an unreserved apology to the victim and his family. I apologize for my actions to the victim's family and victims. As part of the agreement for the new plea, Cook's prison sentence was reduced to 10.5 years. I think you've got good in you, and I think you've got potential, Judge Foxman said. Don't lose sight of that. Camia Gamet. Camia Gamet stood emotionless and rolled her eyes several times during the court session that sealed her fate as a life imprisonment candidate in March 2014. The 31-year-old was convicted of killing her boyfriend, Marcel Hill, with blunt force in the spring of 2012, but denies the allegations, claiming that the prosecutor had lied during the hearing.
Basically, at trial, the way I was portrayed, mostly everything was lies. There was a little bit of truth, but mostly I was convicted off of lies.
Jackson County Circuit Judge John McBain was infuriated by her impassionate response, rude body language, and the evil act that got her into trouble in the first place. Camia Gamet claims that the incident occurred when she mistook Marcel Hill for a dangerous attacker after she woke to the sound of glass shattering over her head in a pitch-black room. "I was startled. I was confused because I couldn't see," Gamet said. According to her testimony, she grabbed a floor lamp and swung it aimlessly, hitting the supposed unknown attacker at least once. During this exchange, Gamet says she fell to the floor and her hand grabbed a knife, which she used to hit the assailant on the chest about 3 times. However, the jury determined the premeditated murder and sentenced her to life in prison.
You gutted him like a fish in that apartment too. You were relentless. You stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed until he was dead.
Erica Mae Butts and Aunt Shanita Latrice Cunningham. Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham produced arguably the most dramatic reaction to a life sentence in a Charleston courtroom. The 2 South Carolina women wailed loudly and hyperventilated as they slumped to the ground. Erica's mom was also visibly traumatized by the judgment. She screamed at her daughter to get up and wept uncontrollably, prompting court staff to bundle her out of the courtroom. Anyone watching would have felt pity for them and perhaps asked for their sentence to be reduced. But when you consider the weight of their crime, you cannot help but agree that they possibly should have gotten the death penalty. In 2009, 3-year-old Serenity Richardson visited the home of the lesbian couple, where she was supposed to stay for at least 2 weeks. As Serenity's godmother, Erica was a close member of the Richardson family. She was present at the hospital when the toddler was born. However, she didn't seem to care too much about these connections when she and her lover beat Serenity to death with a belt and plastic coat hangers simply because she had a potty accident. "It is nearly impossible for words to accurately describe what these women did to that poor little girl," said Elizabeth Gordon, assistant managing solicitor for Charleston County. In a remarkable twist, Erica told the court that she was responsible for some things, but she wasn't responsible for the toddler's death. Meanwhile, Shanita's attorney submitted a similar argument, claiming that Erica was an aggressive partner who demanded control. Circuit Court Judge Deidre Richardson was in no mood to entertain their shameless blame trade. To ignore what must have been excruciating sounds that came from that child is more than disconcerting to this court, Judge Deidre Richardson said. As such, the court finds it appropriate that each be sentenced to the State Department of Corrections for a period of life. With these words, she sealed their fate and triggered possibly the most enigmatic reaction to a life sentence that we've ever seen in a courtroom. Thanks for watching this video to the end. If you've enjoyed it, please click on any of the cards on the screen to watch more interesting videos like this one.